Good afternoon and welcome to People Making Money, one of the Way to Wow shows. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we are here every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, which is right now, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time for those of you on the other side of the country, and an hour in, of course, for Mountain and Central time. And I'm excited today to have you meet my guest, Paul Mackiewicz, whose name I've been mangling all week on my previous two shows. But we'll talk about those a little bit later. I do want to get straight to talking to Paul. We were chatting for a little while before starting the show, and he's got a pretty fascinating background going on here. And you might be able to tell by the fact that he has an army flag juxtaposed with a Spider-Man comic book cover, that there's something going on here that is, not in the sort of typical vein of things, and that always bodes for a great show. So Paul, welcome to People Making Money. How are you doing this? How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing awesome, man. I got all those awesome problems of being way too busy, in the best possible ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, always better to be too busy than not busy enough, right?
Yeah.
Paul, Paul, you and I were talking, like I said, before the show started, and sort of, I was giving you the lowdown on how things work here. And so, if you're willing to, I want to take you back as far as you're willing to go. I already told Paul this is going to be my first question, and that is, when you were a kid growing up you're living in North Carolina right now, right?
I'm in South Carolina, but I originally grew up in Buffalo, New York.
Oh, Buffalo, Ooh, wow. Okay. So when you were freezing in Buffalo, New York as a kid, right? I mean, did you dream of, becoming a digital marketing professional? What was going on in your mind about what you wanted to do, when you grew up?
Yeah, when I was a kid, really the only thing I wanted to do was play professional basketball, actually. So I was an avid athlete. I'm one of 6 kids. So
Oh, wow.
we could like field the whole team. It was great. The only downfall to that is my family's not the most athletic family. A lot of good musicians, a lot of engineers, smart people. But I got the athletic gene. And so, I still like to tell my brothers and sisters, even to this day, even though we're all in our 30s, 40s, 50s, that I'm the favorite, because obviously my parents were coming to all of my sporting events. It was a lot more exciting than dance recitals and things like that. But no, growing up, I wish I had more direction growing up. But I think that's kind of a pretty standard thing here for I guess I'm a millennial. I'm 40, so I'm right in that kind of borderline. I got to grow up with a little bit of the analog world. I remember talking with people on the phone, having to pull the cord 3 rooms away to get on a phone call. I did build websites though, which is kind of interesting. I'd never really thought about that, but I was, when we had like GeoSites and Angel Fire and the old dial-up internet, building initial sites, I had built a few, which is kind of funny because I'm still building websites to this day. It's one of my favorite parts of what I do. But it was never really a career option because I always wanted to be in athletics in some way. That dream kind of died when I stopped growing at 5'9", and I played volleyball and basketball all the way up through college, and just there's you reach limitations physically at some point. And so when I went to college, it was actually for early childhood education, and then switched to communications, and then switched to journalism, and then switched to liberal arts, because I truly, obviously at that point, had zero idea what I wanted to do. I got injured playing volleyball while in college, and I was going to college Fredonia, which is up outside Buffalo, New York. And snowstorms were rolling through and everything like that, and I was on crutches, and I did not do very well my second semester, between changing majors, having no idea what I wanted to do. And I was working at Dick's Sporting Goods, actually in their golf department. And happened to be selling a guy golf clubs who said, "Hey, have you ever thought about the military?" And I never really had, honestly, even though my father was in the Air Force National Guard. My grandfather was a tanker in World War II.
Mm.
And my family on my mother's side can be traced all the way back to the American Revolution. And we've had multiple military veterans throughout my entire lineage. So it wasn't something that I ever really thought of all that much. And what's kind of funny is growing up, I was very close to my grandfather. He never talked about World War II. I was also pretty young at the time, but he's the guy that taught me how to golf, taught me a lot of life lessons out on the course, which I still impart to people when I play with them. I'm a big fan of sports psychology. And, so if anybody needs any sports psychology book recommendations, I've probably read dozens and dozens of them, because I think they're also very applicable to the business world, even to just being a good human. It's a little bit of stoicism, kind of rolled in there too. But so I did my time in the military. I spent 3 years as a computer operator for field artillery. I scored in the top 1% on the ASVAB, so it was kind of like my choice of what to do. And then they said, well, this is what we got for 2 years. I could be infantry guy basically. And I was like, well, what do you got for 3 years? And it was computer operator for field artillery. And so I jumped at it. Did basic and AIT in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And
let me interrupt you for just a minute. Yeah. Did you end up completing college, or did you decide to leave college and join the military? What was the decision point there?
Well, between not getting super great grades, because I didn't go to classes often on crutches and through snowstorms, and just really the only thing I knew at that time was that I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I only did 1 year of college and then joined the military. So I went in, enlisted. When I finished basic IT, I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana. There for 2 months before I got shipped out to Iraq. Spent a little over a year in Iraq. Yeah, we were the very first artillery unit in there. So I spent about the first 3-4 months rolling from Kuwait up into Baghdad, blowing up a lot of stuff, being sure that. So I was the smart guy in artillery, basically. So you would have infantry, forward observers out there. They would need something blown up. They would they were taking fire. They would give me a direction, give me a distance. I'd put into a computer system and judge for the drift of the round, or precipitation knockdown, anything along those lines. Then I call we call them gun bunnies, the people up on the howitzers. And
I haven't heard that term.
Yeah, yeah, they're the gun bunnies. So it's like, put this round in there, put this much gunpowder, that 1 white bag, 2 red bags, turn crank 10 times this way, 12 times this way, pull string, go boom.
Wow.
So I was kind of the guy that was controlling that system. So I did that rolling up there, and then I performed mostly training the Iraqi military force and the Iraqi police, and providing security for elections and in the markets, and even up on guard towers and everything around our base up there, Camp Marlboro, up in Sadr City, which is just outside. It's kind of like the ghetto of Baghdad.
Post 9/11, or?
Yeah, it's another big reason why I enlisted. I enlisted in, I guess it would have been June 2002. So it was just a few months after 9/11. A lot of, talking with my dad about joining the military, and, a lot of, I don't feel super great about it now that I kind of see the reasons that we invade a lot of countries is not as altruistic as I'd hoped we'd say. But, I did feel that I was serving my country and going and doing the right thing at the time. So I spent that time in Iraq, came back, and did oppositional forces. So I played laser tag basically for the last year I was in the military, training people that were going over to the Middle East and using whatever Arabic I remembered, and growing whatever beard I could at the time at 20, 21 years old. And then also my unit was getting moved to a different state. And because I told them very upfront, I'm not re-enlisting, they left me in Fort Polk when my entire unit left. So I did that for a while and got out and moved to Atlanta. In Atlanta, actually, I guess I'll backtrack here. While I was in the last few months I was in the military, I got a hernia. I actually got a hernia while I was in Iraq and just was dealing with it, had to have surgery. And so I couldn't really do PT. And another soldier that got left behind, we consider ourselves the left behind crew here. He also was going through some physical injuries. And so our PT, we got to play speed golf was our PT, where you take your 3-wood, your 7-iron, and your putter. And it's not, it's not how many strokes it takes to get in the hole, it's how fast you get in the hole.
Right.
So you're basically hitting the ball and you're running, you're taking off. I don't know why that was considered light PT as opposed to, some of the more difficult stuff. But I always loved golf. I worked in the golf department at Dick's. I played a little bit in high school. And at that time, I was actually getting really, really quite good. So I got out of the military. I went back and started working for Dick's Sporting Goods, started going to college to spend that GI money and that Army College fund money. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this time of my life, because this is also the time that I found out that my government contract was not as clear as I initially had thought, we'll say.
Okay.
Took me 5 years of cussing out the VA, cussing out DFAS, cussing out everybody that I could, because they were giving me literally like half the amount of college money that my contract said I should. Fought it for 5 years, and eventually they said, oh, okay, yeah, we were wrong. And they sent me a check for like 30 grand and an apology, which at that time I had dropped out of the college I was going to, started going to a tech school, so I don't have a real great track record with like traditional education, we'll say. But so I worked for Dick's Sporting Goods when I got out, and I was taking night classes, and the pro that I was working with was like, man, you're good. Why don't you think about a career in golf? And so I did. I went and took the PGA player ability test. I got a qualifying score, so I was able to become a teaching professional. Yeah, and so I was giving golf lessons. I was running junior camps, giving golf lessons, running tournaments. Really like the greatest job in the world, honestly. I played like 180 rounds one year, I think 175 the second year. So I was playing basically every other day, getting in some golf.
You're still in Atlanta, or?
Yes, this is when I was in Atlanta. And the downfall of that industry is like, unless you're good enough to be playing on Sundays and in tournaments, it's really not that financially lucrative a career. So while I loved it, I just couldn't really make money. I went back to Dick's Sporting Goods. Luckily, I was a good employee and had a good head on my shoulders. I got promoted pretty quickly, became like a team lead, then a manager. Then unfortunately, my grandfather passed away, and I went up to Buffalo for the services and things like that. And just being up there with family, and I just spent the last basically like 8 years out on my own, doing my own thing. I decided I wanted to be by my family for a little bit, and so I worked in a relocation with Dick's Sporting Goods, and they sent me up to Rochester, New York, and so I bounced around like Buffalo and Rochester for a while, still with Dick's. And then anybody that's worked retail, probably knows this. You get burnt out.
Yeah. So before we continue, I want to go back to when you were working as a golf pro, because I think a lot of people, both coming out of the military, coming out of college, whatever, they have kind of a dream of working in sports in some way. I know in the work that I've done with transitioning people, like nowadays you can get these sports management degrees and such, and they all, dream of, managing a team or all these different things. And you kind of dropped something that I want to pick up on a little bit. As you said, you don't really make a whole lot of money unless you're playing on Sundays. So kind of unpack that, if you would, a little bit. I mean, golf, when we think of golf, we think of, tens of millions of dollars in prize money for these tournaments, right? Especially now with the Saudis coming in with, I think it's Live, if I remember correctly, right? So golf is looked at as being a very, very lucrative sport, but of course that's what you're seeing, on the PGA Tour, like you see on a Sunday or whatever. For the mainstream person who's pursuing golf as a career, what are the kind of things that you can do, and what can you expect in terms of compensation, lifestyle, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think the lifestyle is probably like the biggest draw. I have a few. I'm lucky enough at this point in my career to have a few friends, acquaintances that play professional golf. I'm still, I play in charity tournaments quite a bit. I play, a lot of. I get called in as kind of like the ringer for scrambles and things like that. People that want to win. I still get to play an awful lot. And I'm still pretty good. I'm still the best of people that I play with. But in that industry, I think the most important thing is to really find where you can provide value. I mean, looking back on it, I think I probably would have been a really great caddy because mentally, I have a pretty strong game. I don't get too flustered. We're just like we were talking about earlier. I'm pretty boring to play with. Hit the ball straight, and I keep myself out of trouble. So that type of mental attitude is probably very beneficial to a lot of players that tend to be a little bit more aggressive out there. I'm also very analytical. So if I'm on an uphill slope, I know the ball is going to go uphill a little bit. It's going to probably reduce the distance I hit it by 3 to 5 yards or so. I do all those calculations in my head. And so I think that type of value could have been significant if I were to maybe have found somebody to be a caddy for. Also, I think developing golf products. I think what it really comes down to is finding what you're good at and pairing it with the passion that you have. I'm actually in the process right now of building a website for a golf professional who wants to get some more sponsorships and things like that. I happen to be a great website builder. So finding cool ways to show off his personality and why, he would be a good face of a brand for other brands. I'm still involved in the industry in a way, but, unfortunately I'm not swinging the clubs. That would probably be the biggest thing I could say about a lot of sports management, people that want to be in a sports industry. One of my good friends is data analytics for professional sports teams. He loves spreadsheets, but he also is a huge football fan. And so he found a way to kind of, partner those things of doing data analytics for a team. So I think that's maybe taking a step back and realizing, I'm not the star for this, even though I wish I could, but how can I be a star in my own little avenue of it, my own lane? That'd be my biggest recommendation, because I'm sure, I can think of a half dozen people that I just know personally, people that wish that they were doing something different in a passion. They pursued it slightly, but maybe never found their own lane in it. And it's kind of interesting that's truly why I have a marketing company right now. It's because I love buying psychology. I love thinking about how people think. I love digging into why people do what they do, and especially when it comes to money, because this is we're all working to make this money. How we're going to spend that, because most of my clients are law firms and doctors. So that's not exactly a small decision. So these people are making a big financial commitment here to something. And how they're going to make that decision is going to come down to the likability of the person that they find out there. And anybody here that's ever needed a lawyer or a doctor knows that if they've gone to their website, it's probably one of the most boring things I've ever seen. Or or if it's a law firm, a lot of times you're you get that sleazy feeling from them. That's the fun of what I do, is I come in and I figure out how to make this guy not sleazy, how to make this doctor look less clinical, more friendly, more reasons to build that emotional connection. And I think probably all comes around a little bit to that mental side that I enjoy in golf, which is problem solving. That's really what I do, is I'm a digital problem solver for people.
So let's go back. You're back in the Buffalo area. You're working for Dick's Sporting I think a lot of people have the perception that working for a big retailer like that is not a worthwhile thing to do. And I'm curious about you. Obviously, you are working for Dick's at several times in your life. You in essence would go back. So what was that experience like basically working for Dick's is, I think they're the biggest sporting goods retailer in the country now, right? They're probably bigger than Big Five, which used to be the dominant one.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that Dick's Sporting Goods is the biggest in the US. They if anybody remembers Galleons, they bought out Galleons, and that's when they became the biggest in the US. Galleons was a really, really cool sports store that had rock walls inside of them.
Oh.
And so Dick's Sporting Goods used to be like, they had single floor stores, kind of similar to Big Five or Sports Authority or things like that. And then they bought out Galleons, which was this kind of different version of a sporting goods store, usually 2 stories, had a rock wall, had a little bit more kind of like a Bass Pro, like experiential type buying, which I always found interesting, because that's this is how people are spending money. You're trying to capitalize on that. Working for Dick's Sporting Goods was, honestly, it's great. It was I don't really have a whole lot of bad things to say about it, because they recognized that I cared, which I think is another kind of pretty steady attribute that I've provided to most businesses, and what I think I provide to my clients now is that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it well. And so when it came down to managing a retail store, I was always heavily focused on ensuring that every single person gets greeted, every single person feels appreciated, every single person that you're asking the right questions to guide them in their buying process. In the golf department, that pro I used to, that convinced me to go take the player ability test, he used to always give me a hard time, because he would say, "What, do you get married over there?" But it's because I was over there, like, BSing with a guy, talking about golf, talking about, courses in the area they played, talking about their best round, things like that. Like, I feel like that relationship building, that emotional connection that you build with people is very important. And, obviously, when they looked at average ticket per like sales rep, mine would always be really, really high, because not only was I selling them a driver, but I was also, being sure that they were getting a head cover with it, that they had this accessory, that they had a brush for it, that they, why don't, if you get a new driver, get a new bag? I mean, you might as well color coordinate, man. Make sure you look good at that, but it's in having that conversation that I'm able to, upsell. And so that's probably one of the reasons that, Dick's always kind of recognized me as a good employee. I'm also very organized. I like order and systems and things like that. And so when it came to management, I've always been a pretty good manager of people, because I like giving them guideposts. I'm not a good micromanager. It's probably the first thing my team would say is, like, at least he doesn't bother me when it comes to it. I give an outcome, I give some guideposts to get to that outcome. And then outside of that, I'm trusting you to care about your job as much as I do, So, but with that, Dick's Sporting Goods is awesome.
So where do you think that ability to manage people, to, it's interesting what you're saying. To digress for just a minute, yesterday on my show, Business Lessons from the Military, I was talking about decision making, and because I'm going through Marine Corps warfighting doctrine, and the Marine Corps philosophy on decision making is push the authority to make decisions as low down the chain of command as you can, because the Marine on the battlefield looking to take that tactical objective is in a much better place to be able to make the decisions that are necessary to achieve the objective than the guy sitting back at the command post who doesn't have the same level of situational awareness, et cetera, right? So when I talk to Marine Corps veterans, right, and they talk about leadership and how they exercise it, you can see a clear connection between their military service and how they exercise leadership in the civilian world. So you had a relatively short time in the Army, just a few years. You didn't talk about whether in the 3 years you became a sergeant or anything like that. So I don't know that, I'm curious to know how, your military time affected your leadership and management ability. And if it didn't, where did it come? Where did that ability come from? How did you develop that? Because I think you're right. The ability to develop relationships and lead people is a crucial skill, right, in any kind of endeavor.
Yeah, I'd say from the military, and this is just kind of something I've found in my career multiple times. is with people, you often can't learn from them. But even when you can't learn from them, you can learn what not to do from them.
Mm-hmm.
And my sergeant, he was a super nice guy. I really liked him. He's great, great as a person. Not the best sergeant, not the best leader, not the most buttoned up soldier.
Mm-hmm.
So being kind of who I am naturally, and also I think athletics probably had a lot to do with it too. Being captains of teams and being willing to be in a leadership position. It is something you have to be willing to do. A lot of it kind of came down on me to pick up the slack for somebody that above me wasn't that great. And I also believe that if you make the person above you look great, you're always going to move up. You're always going to be rewarded. So even when I was, working as just an associate for Dick's Sporting Goods, I always took pride in what I was doing and, covered for my managers if they were dropping the ball somewhere. If I saw something that had to be done, I just did it. I think that's one of the big things you learn in the military is like action matters. Like if you don't know what to do, do something, right? It's 100% a core value of my current company. Honorable marketing is a lot of the reason that people come to us is because they went to school for 8 years to be a lawyer or a doctor, and they didn't take a single marketing class. They didn't take a single, some don't even take a business class, and yet now they're running a business and, having to decide what to do on the marketing side. And I'm fine with telling some multi-million-dollar law firm, hey, you're not doing the right thing. This is stupid. You should be doing this. Like this is, and I'm not saying it to be mean. I'm just, we both want you to succeed. We're both here for your success. I'm telling you what you're doing is not working. This will work better. Right. And I think they appreciate that too. And again, it kind of comes down to like, if I make them look great, if I'm making my clients money, I'm making money. Mm-hmm. And if you have that mindset in just about anything that you do, that, you want to make sure that the people above you are looking great. If there aren't people above you, like, I'm the CEO and founder of my company. I don't have anybody above me, but I substitute in there the clients. My clients are above me. Right. If I make them look great, I look great. And the people below me, I'm at kind of a fun time in the business right now where I'm removing myself from just about every aspect of running the business outside of being, the witty, charming face that gets to go on podcasts and promote my business and go talk and do webinars and do trade shows and do things like that. I stick more on the sales side now. But one of the things that I'm telling them all the time is you're basically like my lead blocker. It's your job to protect my time. That's how you can help me. That's how you are managing up, is because if a client's getting to me at this point, it's taking away from me selling more and growing the business and things like that. And so my employees don't want a client to get to me. They want to really handle everything that they can at their level. Mm-hmm. And it makes, luckily this has been like a pretty smooth transition all in all. Like I can't say it's been too bad, but when you have somebody you've been working with for 3-4 years and you're like, hey, so you're not going to talk to me that much anymore. Now you're going to talk to this guy. It's not an easy conversation, certainly, but if you have the systems and the right people in place that can handle it, and they care, that's probably one of the biggest things I look for when I hire people is like, do you care? Mm-hmm. Because I think that's the biggest differentiator between like good employees and bad employees. Like right. Technical knowledge, I can teach you, best tactics, strategies, even like mindsets and psychology around it. Like a lot of that can be taught, but if you don't care, then you're not the type of person that we want. And with Dick's Sporting Goods, I think they always took an interest in me because I took an interest in them too, I'd say. My first promotion, I told them I wanted it. But I mean, after that, most of my other promotions came saying like, hey, you deserve this, take this, you deserve this. Which, in hindsight, I'm like, hey, maybe 6 months earlier, I should have said like, hey, I want a promotion, right? So I guess it's like a bit of a double-edged sword, but if you have that mindset, I think, you're going to move in the right direction. But with, and so like, I really wouldn't have done any of it differently. than how I've done it either, because obviously I've made tons and tons of mistakes. I mean, countless mistakes. So but it brought me to where I am today in a lot of it. And I really enjoy what I do now, because I don't work for sleazy lawyers. If they're a sleazy lawyer, I just fired a client the other day because, I gave him 6 months. I kept asking what charities he's going to donate to this quarter. I kept, kind of like, let's see if you're a good human in a few different ways. And he never was kind of coming around to it. And in fact, he was getting like verbally abusive towards one of my employees. And I was like, nope, you're done. And I just called him up and I said, yeah, good luck. Tell me where you need me to transfer everything, because you're no longer a client of ours. And with this, actually, since the pandemic, I actually started working with a lot more naturopathic doctors, because I saw, I'm not a big fan of the medical system here in our country as it is, especially the VAs, because I've gone through some health issues. I've spent a year in Iraq, a little messed up in the head in some cases, and the answer was always like, throw pills at them. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, what other options do I have? And I found with naturopathic medicine and homeopathic medicine that I always had much better results. Good for the body, good for my mind. And what's nice is law firms pay the bills. Like, I charge a law firm a lot more than I charge a naturopathic doctor for similar services, but it's because that's what the market demands. But what I really enjoy doing right now is getting people out of the sick care system, and the more attention I can bring towards naturopathic medicine, the better. And, I wouldn't have known that had I not been a veteran and gone through the VAs. And, I've lived in 6, 7, maybe 8 different cities at this point. So, I've been to a lot of them, and it's pretty clear to me what state-run medical care looks like.
Right.
And so now I feel like very personally rewarded too, to not only use my skills, but to use them in a way that I feel like I'm, doing God's work. I'm providing value for lots more people than I individually could, just by helping these other businesses market what they do.
Yeah.
So sorry, it's a bit of a tangent there.
No. And it was a tangent that I encourage you to go down. So take us from, you're getting bored with retail to whatever the next step was, so we'll take the thread, get back on the thread of your professional journey.
Yeah, this was kind of like rapid fire of poor decision making and jumping at crazy opportunities, we'll say.
Rapid fire poor decision making, always a good thing to hear from a former artillery guy.
Yes. It's very true. But I guess that's also kind of an attribute of me, is I truly believe God puts opportunities in your path constantly, and it's our free will. It's our opportunity to take them or not take them. And I always felt like, why would I not take it? What's the down? What, am I going to sit in the snow in Buffalo longer? So, I
have a friend whose philosophy is just say yes.
I'm getting to the point in my career right now where I'm like, I got to say no a lot more. So that's actually been I'm working on the opposite right now. I'm working on saying no more. But yeah, so when I was burnt out on retail, and I was with Dick's for probably like 5-6 years, so I did it a while. I had a guy I used to play a lot of golf with, and I'd go to his bar and drink, and he had indoor golf simulators and a driving range and a bar, restaurant. And I'd been a patron, and I'd run some events there. And he was like, man, like, if you don't want to do that anymore, I would love you to come and run this place for me. So I went and I ran his business for about 2 years. Wow. I nearly tripled the amount of revenue that he was doing in the 3 years I was there. Through, and this is just when, Facebook had been around a little bit, but this is when like really you could really promote a business using Facebook ads. You could really, a lot of people didn't really know how to run even like Google ads yet and things like that. And so I jumped in there and, helped this guy's business explode. To the point where he was like thinking about closing down. 3 years later, well, I guess 2.5 years later or so, he was like extremely upset that I was like, I don't want to be in Buffalo anymore. And he's like, how much money do I have to give you? I was like, I don't think there's a number. I was like, I don't think that's it. So So I'd saved up some money. My sister was living out in New Mexico, and I was just like, I'm out of here. Like, I'm just gonna go do something new. I'm gonna go figure it out. And I was not like super young. I think it was 28-ish, 28. Um, and she needed a roommate, and I was like, let's do this. And so I jumped in my car and I sold everything I had, drove to New Mexico, no job, no anything. And I was out there playing golf because that's what I do when I go places. And this guy had an idea for a scooter rental company. And I was like, well, I had about like $8,000 or so that I could put towards a little side hustle, startup business, see what I can do. And so together we bought a bunch of scooters, and in a year I opened up 5 locations, these like little pop-up shops. I'd find a business that I could rent out the front of their business and put a pop-up shop and show up with 8 scooters and hire somebody that just I ran the entire company off iPads, and
Wow.
had a digital contract where they would just fill out the information on it and email them the contract, email us one, put some GPS trackers on the scooters. And so we had 5 locations throughout New Mexico. I was busting my ass. I was working. We're talking about like 70, 80-hour weeks, driving nonstop. Like,
Wow.
I was sleeping in shops. Sometimes I'd like get to a motel at 10 o'clock at night, be waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning to drive 4 hours to a different location to check on that one. It was insane. It was crazy. It's craziest year of my we'll say professional career, but it was also my first, I guess, venture into entrepreneurship. It was my first company. And the guy that I partnered with, I also found that like a lot of entrepreneurs are pretty slimy themselves. Some of them just really aren't in it for the right reasons. And I wasn't in it for the right reasons. I was opening a company because I want to make money, right? Like that was my goal at that point. Like, I can buy a scooter for $600 and then rent it out for $80 a day, and this thing's paid for in a week, and everything's profit after that. Like, the numbers made a lot of sense. I probably grew too quick and burnt myself out. But also, like, New Mexico's a weird place. Like, it was fine living there. It was cool. My sister and I got to hang out a lot and grow closer. But one day, a buddy of mine, he's a friend of mine I've had since we were in kindergarten. We literally know each other since kindergarten, so 5 years old. And now I was getting close to 30, I'd say probably like 29, somewhere in there. And he called me and said, hey, my roommate's leaving. Interested in coming to New York City. You've always talked about it. Do you want to do it? So I said, well, let me put some feelers out there. And I found a job with a brand new marketing company. Well, they weren't brand new, but this is a new office they were opening in New York City, and they're called Main Street Hub. And some people probably have heard of them. They used to be about 2-3 years after I got there, they became the largest online presence management company in the US. They're bought by GoDaddy eventually, but when I got there in New York City, our office was 2 blocks south of Times Square. So I was walking through Times Square every day. Very different world than driving around New Mexico in the deserts.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. I literally like put my desk together. I think I was the 15th, 16th employee at that office. And I did very well in phone sales, getting people to let us build them mobile websites and run their social media and run their reputation management. And I saw a lot of value in what we were doing because we were working for a lot of like mom and pop shops. I was the golf course guy. I had like right around 50 golf courses across the US that I was managing. Wow. All their social media and things like that. Not to say that I was managing it, but I sold them, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things in sales is like, if you can find something to relate to these people on, calling them and telling them, hey, I used to be a golf pro. This company is really great. They're going to manage your online presence. You guys are going to look awesome online. They're going to believe me over, just some random person. So, because I knew their industry, I could talk the talk with them. And I did really well there. I was a top 3% sales guy in all of New York City. And they started sending me around to trade shows. And so I was, usually like 2 weekends a month. I was in a different city. Spent a lot of time in Las Vegas, a lot of time in Chicago, Miami. So it was about as awesome a life as someone, living in New York City and traveling every other weekend to a different city across the US and doing trade shows. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It's great. I learned a lot. I think that there's no bigger skill that you can have than good salesmanship. And I kind of took what I had from Dick's Sporting Goods, which was, really asking probing questions, getting people to really open up as far as what their needs were. And now I was transitioning that from, golf clubs and baseball bats to marketing. And what's funny is I have a degree in marketing. I did finish those night classes eventually and got my degree in marketing. But it was great. It was a wonderful time in my life. And then I met the future wife. She was living up in Harlem. I was living up on the Upper East Side. We met, and about 6 months later, we decided to move to Miami. And so I was looking for a marketing company down there to go and work with. And I found this one company. They're great. They're still really good friends to this day. But I applied for a sales manager position, and they didn't call me back in like 2 days. And I was like, come on, Miami. Like, I'm a top 3 salespercent. They're top 3% sales guy in New York City. And I'm looking to come to Miami, and you guys aren't hitting me up right away. And so after like 3 or 4 days, I just called the CEO, and I was like, dude, come on. Like, I'm the exact type of person that you want at your business. I'm coming from as a marketing executive from an Inc. 500 back-to-back company. So I kind of tooted my own horn, and then I also ripped into him a bit, which if there's anything I would say, like, it's okay to be a little aggressive sometimes. Like I was like, you manage the online presence for businesses. You're a 3.2 on Google. You don't have enough reviews. Nobody's answering your reviews. You guys haven't posted on your social in 6 months. So I like tore into him a bit here. And he's like, you make very good points. When can you start? And I was like, awesome. So yeah, I ended up transitioned from being a marketing executive to a director of business development. And I got there, and this company, like I said, they're still good friends of mine today, but I was blown away at how inefficient all of their systems were. I mean, I got there, they didn't have a CRM. And at this point, they had over 200 clients, and they didn't have a CRM. They were basically working off like spreadsheets and smile and dial, which, I love some good smile and dial, but I'd like to, some systems behind it. So I went over there, and I built a CRM for them. I built their email campaigns. I, managed their social. I started, running webinars. I started like really expanding out what they were doing. And then my wife got the dream job offer in Los Angeles, California. So she works in high-end luxury hotels. So in New York, she was at the St. Regis. In Miami, she did some property management for some brand new luxury complexes that were put up. And then she got the phone call for the Waldorf Astoria in Beverly Hills to come and be the director of guest relations.
Wow.
So yeah, that was the dream job for her. Literally like her ideal job. So at that time, about 2 weeks before she got that job offer, on the map, the CEO came to me and said, hey, you're doing an amazing job. We'd like to promote you to the VP of client success. We don't think we're handling our clients well enough. We want you to build out some systems over there. And so I had to come back to him and say, awesome, here's my plan. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to fix this. I'm just going to do it from LA. and he was a little shocked. He was not super happy about my decision, but kudos to this guy. He took it in stride and said, awesome. How about you open an office out there, hire some salespeople, we'll build a West Coast office. And so I went out there and opened a West Coast office for that company. And it was great. Went out there. It became, we'll say it became like troublesome after about a year and a half, mostly because when you're an executive member of a company, kind of like the C-suite, but working on the other side of the country, and I was flying back and forth a lot, and it's just really difficult to excel. We'll say I think that the job could be done, but I think it's difficult to excel when you're not seeing those people's faces every day and doing what you do. So I I slipped. I'll be out. I mean, I talk about mistakes I make all the time, but I slipped, and I had this guy come to me and say, "Hey, we are running his marketing actually," and he said, "I think I could build a digital marketing agency. I think you're the perfect guy to run it. Will you come over and be my COO?" And he threw a, I mean, I don't know if I can swear on here or not, but he threw a ton of money at me. This guy, he threw a big chunk of money and said, "Come on over," and I took it. I grew that business pretty quick. We were profitable in 5.5 months. We hit profitability. So I was doing great things. Really, I had the experience. I'd already kind of done a lot of it. And then about obviously you start seeing cracks in the facade every once in a while. The CEO, who was also running sales, kind of stopped showing up. The sales guys kind of stopped doing their job, and I wasn't running sales. I was running operations. So, and also the financial backers, the technically owners of the company, they were becoming a bit less responsive and on stuff. And I never touched the financials outside of just tracking numbers, making sure we were making money. It was really all I submit payroll to them, and they would take care of it and things like that. And then suddenly I had a web developer come to me one day and say like, "Hey, my check bounced." And I said, shut up. And then my check bounced. And then needless to say, like, things went downhill quite quickly, to the point where the owner got, I found out that one of the owners, there's two of them, got sent to prison for 25 years for some pretty nasty stuff. And suddenly I'm sitting here, and the other owner is like, "That was the dude with the money. Like, I don't know what to tell you." And I'm looking at a team of 10 people saying like, "Guys, I truly like don't know what to tell you." And it was extremely hard. I actually have a picture of myself. It's the only panic attack I've ever had in my life. But I took a picture of myself I'm literally crying. I'm bawling. I'm so stressed because I've got 10 people that I'm literally responsible for their well-being and their lives. And I don't have answers. Suddenly, these people, they still owe me like 10 grand, which obviously I'll never get, to this day. But I was literally forced into a position where I was like, I had no idea what to do. I had just signed a law firm as a client for that company. And then basically found out that guy had gone to prison, and went back to him and said like, "So this is what I got for you. I'm going to leave this company, and here's the reasons why. And I think the only option that I have is I'm going to start my own agency. I got me and one other guy. I'm going to bust my ass. I'm going to build you a really great website. I know this is not like how you wanted to start a marketing relationship, but I'm just going to be open and upfront and honest with you. I'm going to do a great job. I've got all the skills. I've got all the experience to do this. Trust me, we'll get there." And that guy is still a client to this day. He's been a client of mine for over 4 years. So he's my very first client. I started my own company, kind of out of frustration, out of desperation, out of all of it. And it's my chief production officer. He's a great guy. I call him my Renee Zellweger, because at that time I was like, "Guys, I think the ship is going down. I'm going to go do my own thing. Who wants to come with me?" And he's like, "I'm in, let's go." And so it was me and him sitting on my couch in West Hollywood going, "So what do we call this company? What do we do? Like, should I do all the work? Should you do all the work? Like, what should we do here?" I was like, "I can't really pay you." Yeah. In 4 years, it's been 4 years now. At that time we were #smart marketing. And now we are honorable marketing. And now we have, I've relocated the company from California to South Carolina now, but I have 2 employees in California, 1 in Texas, 1 in North Carolina, 2 in Kenya, 1 in Venezuela, 1 in Indonesia, 1 in Pakistan,
Wow.
and a development team in Canada. And so, pretty cohesive team. We've been growing steadily. We've doubled in size just about every year. So, things are good. It's like, we're at the point right now where I don't have to be doing everything. I still really enjoy building websites. I do all the strategy calls. I still do most of our sales. But now I have like kind of systems in place, a lot of LinkedIn messaging sequences and email campaigns and run a lot of paid ads myself and things like that. So we have a pretty good system in place, and we've got, I look up at my board, 38 clients. So been growing steadily, and I think that we're really at like an inflection point right now too. I think we're gonna take off even more here over the next few months with a lot of what we've done. So very exciting things over here. But as you could tell, I didn't plan this. I certainly didn't plan this way. But.
So, here you are. You mentioned you're 40 years old, right? And when we were talking before the show started, you were saying you have a very meandering path, and indeed a lot of sort of back and forth, and yet there seems to be some consistent aspects to it. And when I first heard your company name, Honorable Marketing, I thought it must have something to do with military service, right? Because a lot of people from the military, honorable service and all that kind of stuff. But it seems to me that it's really honorable marketing, like marketing done in an honorable way, right? Instead of like BS marketing. So,
well, no, I think you are 100% right. I think that the military side definitely plays into it. My entire company knows the Army core values, leadership, loyalty, duty, respect. I gotta remember now. Selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage. There you go. So we talk about them during company meetings, but yeah, I think that's true. I think it's honorable because we're definitely a veteran-owned business. Even my COO, which I brought on in January, she's also a veteran. So I'm about to hire a veteran who's a sales guy. So I'm trying to really stick to that side. But when we were #smart marketing, I had a little side hustle in Miami where I would go to people's houses and help them set up their smart homes. Google Home, Alexa, the lights, the speakers, and so that stuff's not the most intuitive design sometimes. But having somebody come in there and kind of do it, I could do a job in like 30 minutes and make a couple $100. It was pretty great. So I had this LLC from it, which was #SmartLife. And when Christian and I, my chief production officer, were sitting on that couch, I was like, well, I got this LLC. Let's just use it. Let's put it to work. And so we became #smart marketing. I liked it because one, I'm definitely a work smarter, not harder guy. Like I work very hard, but I find the most efficient ways to do things. Certainly, like if there's a programming or tool, I love ChatGPT, and talk about efficiency and finding ways to do things smart.
Right.
But with that, when I was relocating, I couldn't take California anymore. It was a little much for me. I had my first kid and I didn't want to raise him out there. So when we moved out here to South Carolina, I was like, well, I also don't want to pay that California tax anymore. So let's do full relocation here and rebrand. And I was talking with my group of friends. I've had the same core group of like 8 friends for nearly 30 years. I guess some of them over 30 years. And I was asking them, I said, guys, I need a top 5 list of words that you would associate with me. And I'll tell you, smart didn't come up once. But they did say, integrity and honor, and you bust your ass, you work hard, you're and honor kind of it showed up on a few of them. And I said, you know what, I think that makes sense for me. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, and I'm okay with that, but I am certainly honorable. I had to fire a client the other day because he didn't fit what I feel. It's hard to promote somebody when you look on their Glassdoor and you see, they have a 21% CEO approval rating with women because they all think he's sexist and this and that. And I'm like, right. Yeah, that's not a guy I don't want to help his law firm grow. I actually took that as kind of a little motivation to go find a few other law firms in the area and help them. Right.
Right.
But I think that sticking to that, I also think that I don't know what the word is for it, but like an awakening, a revelation, a change in how businesses are operating. Like I would rather make less money and feel good about what I do. And, I work with naturopathic doctors. They don't have that much money. So like, I can't charge them what I charge a lawyer, but I like working with them because I know that they're positively impacting their community, and they actually care about whole body health, and they don't want to just throw some pills at you and things like that. And I think that kind of like speaks to why we are honorable, and also like we're really good at what we do. And so if we're, that's why Spider-Man's there. With great power comes great responsibility. It's not. I think the days of just like hustle for the sake of making money. Like I love to hustle. I love to be busy. I love to keep going and doing stuff, but it's not because I'm making money. Like I got this one of my favorite things to get, and I tell all my clients this, is like, if you get really good feedback from one of your clients or one of your patients, I want to hear about it. Because I almost feel like they're saying that about us, because we are freeing up the time for that client to provide that service. We are, the reason that somebody even knew that they existed, and so they tried them out. And so I'm very blessed, very lucky, very fortunate that I'm in a position where I can fire a client if I don't feel like they fit. But it also leaves me, when I bring on somebody, when I'm having a sales conversation with somebody, I think they know pretty quickly that I care. And I think it just goes a long way.
So it's so interesting what you're saying about firing a client, because it took me a good 10 years into the business I had before I joined the Navy to realize that sometimes one of the best things you can do in a business is fire a client who doesn't fit with your ethical, moral outlook, who is, abusing either my staff or was refusing to honor her obligations she was a landlord to her tenants, those kind of, and it was an incredibly corrosive situation. And so eventually I did fire her. And I was talking to the person who had referred her to me many years before, and I was feeling kind of guilty because, like, this guy, he went out of his way to refer him and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, by the way, I had to dump such and such as a client. He said, well, when did you do that? I said, well, just last week. He's like, last week? He said, oh, I dumped her 5 years ago. Like, oh gosh, I wish you had told me,
Right?
but it goes back to what you were saying, that you can't necessarily learn from other people. A lot of times I think we have to learn these lessons by going through them, right? We have to experience them. So
yeah.
But please.
I was just gonna say mine was a little bit similar. That I had it was a good business associate of mine who he refers me out a lot, and I wanted to call him first, and I was like, dude, I don't know if you have problems with this guy, but if you heard what he just said to one of my employees, like, I was like, and then I looked him up, and I was like, I see the type of person he is, and I just got to let you know he doesn't fit with what we do, and so I'm going to let him go. And he goes, what do you mean you're going to let him go? It's like, he pays you like a lot of money. I was like, it doesn't really matter. Like, he's just not a good fit. I go, but I feel like I have to tell you first. I want to be respectful to you. Like, I really appreciate that you send me people, and obviously we do really good work, so you keep doing it, but this guy's got to go. And his response was basically like, I totally understand. This really sucks because now I got to go find somebody else for him. But he goes, so if there's anything you can do to help me on this, he was even like, kind of like, will you just do the work and like, I'll kind of, play lead blocker on this. And I was like, I'm sorry, but I don't think that's going to work. Cause like, in all honesty, like, you reap what you sow in this world. And, he's not, I don't think he'll be successful long term. Like, you could grow really fast, you could do things, but at some point you get found out. Everybody always gets found out.
Yep. Well, gosh, the hour zoomed by. I don't know if you realize we're already up for our hour, and as is so often the case, we could probably easily talk for another 2 or 3 hours. I'm going to have you come on one of my other shows and talk just about the marketing side of things and that whole side of it. So we'll get you on again soon, I hope. And we can talk again. It's from my perspective, it's been a great conversation, especially since I did not have to talk very much.
There's my wife could tell you, I'm definitely a good talker. She said she knew I was the one when she took me to a party and she didn't see me for an hour and a half. And she's like, you didn't know anybody there? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, it was your party. You go do your thing. I'll do mine. You're cool. It's all good.
Well,
So,
I hang on to
her. She's a good one.
Absolutely. Well, if you'll just kind of hang tight for a couple minutes, I'm going to wrap things up, and then we can go offline and say our goodbyes. But first of all, I want to thank you, Paul Mackiewicz, for honorable marketing. And by the way, I'll put a link in the show notes to your website and whatever other links you want me to put in there, so people know where they can get in touch with you. I mean, what you're doing is fantastic, and so much of marketing is so sleazy, clickbaity kind of stuff these days. My daughter talks about it, fairly often, and it's good to know that there are people in that business who are honest, reputable people who can help us market in an honorable and reputable way, because I think most people do want to do that, but either they don't know how, or they get sort of sucked into ways of doing things that don't necessarily fit with who they really want to be. So thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you all very much for joining us. If you have questions, comments, good, bad, feel free to drop them into our social media, send me an email. All those contacts will be in the show notes as well. Always would love to hear from you. And anything that you want to pass on to Paul, I have no doubt that he will respond. But be a nice person if you're going to contact Paul.
It doesn't matter.
By being a nasty viewer.
I don't know. That's how I got a job in Miami, by being a little nasty. So
you were tough, not nasty. Okay. Army strong. Wasn't that there you go. All right. Well, that wraps it up for us today. Just want to mention we do it all again next week. So Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, we'll be doing Trust and Estates Weekly. Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, we'll be doing business lessons from the military. And then on Wednesday of next week, just about 7 days from today, will be the next edition of People Making Money at 12:30 p.m. Pacific. So I hope you will join me for all of those. One last thing before I let you go, please do consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. That way you will get notified of all the shows that we do if you can't watch them live, and would love to have you as a regular viewer of the show here. So again, thank you very much for joining us today. Paul, thanks again for being a guest on the show, a fantastic guest on the show. And that just leaves me with, my sign off, which those of you who watch the show know. It's to my dear friend Marie up in heaven. Just want to say to you, darling, you are and ever will be my belle. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful rest of the day and week, and we'll see you next week.